My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 40, and for the last 11 years, I've been working in B2B tech sales at a mid-sized company in Austin, Texas. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, I just delivered, quarter after quarter. My recent project? 6 months of blood, sweat, and negotiating with a multinational logistics giant. Late-night calls, weekend revisions, countless flights. I skipped my niece's birthday, canceled a vacation with my sister, and even pulled an all-nighter when the legal team asked for one more clause edit. But in the end, I closed it. $2.3 million. The biggest deal the company had seen in over 2 years. I thought I'd finally earned a moment to breathe. The next morning, literally less than 24 hours later, my boss, Craig, asked me to come into his office. He had that fake concern look some managers wear when they're about to stab. You through the ribcage with corporate speak. He didn't even offer me a seat. "Rachel," he said, avoiding eye contact, "we've had to make some tough decisions. Executive leadership has decided to cut back. Budget constraints, restructuring. You understand, right?" I blinked. I thought maybe I was hearing him wrong. I had just brought in the largest deal of the quarter, and now I was being laid off? "We appreciate your years of service," he added, sliding a thin envelope across his desk like it was a tip left for a waitress. "This has nothing to do with your performance." I didn't cry. I didn't ask why me. I didn't throw my coffee at the wall or beg for my job. Instead, I just stood there taking it in, numb. Then something in me snapped, not in a loud way, but in the terrifying, silent kind. The kind of break that happens right before something gets rebuilt stronger. I picked up the envelope, nodded once, and said, "Understood." No rage, no begging, just clarity. Because I knew, in that exact moment, this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of their reckoning. I went home that afternoon with a cardboard box, a severance packet, and a knot in my chest so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. For the first time in 17 years, I didn't have a meeting to prep for, a sales pipeline to obsess over, or a deck to revise. My email was cut off by 3 p.m., my company phone locked by 3:15. And just like that, I was scrubbed from the system, like I had never existed. At first, I did what anyone would do after getting blindsided. I sat on my couch in sweatpants, clutching a lukewarm coffee, wondering if I was just done. Too old. Too expensive. Maybe I was outdated, just like Craig had whispered behind closed doors to the new VP 6 months ago. The idea stung, but something inside me, it didn't break, it burned. That night, I pulled up my personal laptop and started combing through my old spreadsheets, pitches, quarterly results, anything I still had copies of. And the numbers slapped me in the face. I was responsible for over $29 million in revenue in the last 5 years alone. My renewal rate? 93%. Client retention under my name was the highest in the firm. Even the impossible client from Denver, who had chewed through 5 reps in 2 years, had stuck with me for 4 straight renewals. I wasn't just a line item. I was the damn engine. And then the calls started. First, it was Greg from Houston. "Hey Rachel, heard some weird stuff. You still around?" Then Hannah from San Diego. "I don't want to work with your replacement. Tell me you're still in the game." One after another. These weren't pity calls. These were people who trusted me, not the logo on my old email signature. They didn't care about some polished press release announcing my departure. They wanted to know if I could still deliver, because they knew what I was worth, even when my own company didn't. It was like someone had flipped on a light I didn't realize had been dimmed. I wasn't disposable. I was valuable. I was the reason that deal got signed. Not the guy who shook hands at the closing dinner. It wasn't the brand they came back for year after year. It was my voice on the phone at 7 p.m. solving problems. my handwritten thank you notes, my dogged persistence during contract red lines. I was the brand. That realization hit harder than any layoff ever could. They didn't just underestimate me. They thought they could replace me. But here's the thing, no one tells you until it's too late. You can't replicate loyalty. You can't outsource trust. And you sure as hell can't erase a reputation that was earned the hard way. They pushed me out thinking I'd disappear. They forgot I had something they never understood. Clients who saw me as more than a name. On a contract. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. I didn't blast anything on LinkedIn. I didn't post a vague on to new adventures status. I kept quiet, strategically, deliberately quiet. Because while my former company was still clumsily trying to patch the holes left by my departure, I was laying bricks for something they couldn't see coming. I didn't want revenge. I wanted precision. The first thing I did was call a lawyer, not to sue. I didn't need drama in court. I needed clarity. I wanted to know exactly what I had signed over the years, what non-competes applied, and where. The legal lines were drawn. Turns out, the company had been too cheap to update their contracts after a 2016 restructure. My non-compete? Expired. My non-solicitation clause? Poorly written. In other words, I was free. Legally, completely free. That night, I bought a domain, monroegrowth.com. I didn't even know if I wanted to call it a consulting firm, a boutique agency, or a rebel movement. I just knew it was mine. No VP approval needed, no branding committee. Just me and a vision that had been buried under bureaucracy for too long. Then I reached out to Alex and Vanessa, two former colleagues who had also been restructured in the past year. Both had left quietly, heads down, because the corporate game taught us that dignity means silence. But I remembered how Alex used to fix broken workflows in half the time anyone else could, and how Vanessa could talk a nervous CFO off a ledge, in the middle of a budget cut. They were undervalued, just like I'd been. So I made them an offer. Let's build something where we don't have to ask permission to do the right thing. They didn't hesitate. We met in my living room, armed with laptops, pizza, and all the bitterness we'd been pretending didn't exist. And out of that fire came something solid, a plan. We'd launch a boutique growth consultancy focused on exactly the kind of B2B clients the old company kept fumbling. No red tape, no bullshit, just results. I used my savings to file for an LLC. I designed the logo myself, basic but clean. We created email addresses, client decks, and a pitch framework, all in under 2 weeks. Every detail was intentional. Every decision surgical. While my former company was still scrambling to find someone who could even access the CRM properly, I was fielding quiet feelers from old clients. Hey, just checking. If you ever go out on your own, we'd be interested. Didn't say much, just stay tuned, because the game hadn't ended. It had just changed courts. And this time, I wrote the rules. 3 months after launching Monroe Growth, we landed our first major client, and it just so happened to be one of my former employer's crown jewels. They reached out quietly, through a personal email, asking if we could grab coffee and talk strategy. I already knew what it meant. I showed up to the meeting prepared, not with a pitch deck, but with confidence. They laid it all out. They weren't happy with the new rep the company had assigned them. Communication was slow. Deliverables missed. The trust they'd built with me over 5 years? Gone in a quarter. 2 weeks later, the contract was terminated. And 3 days after that, signed. With us. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. And apparently, it echoed louder than I expected. The following Monday, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Craig Bennett. My old boss. The man who handed me a pink slip right after I brought in $2.3 million. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. but I was curious. So I picked up. "Rachel," he started, voice drenched in artificial warmth. "How've you been?" No small talk. I let the silence hang. "I've been following what you're doing. Very impressive," he said. "Listen, the team's been talking. We may have acted too quickly. There's an opportunity we'd love to explore. Maybe bring you back in, but this time in a more senior strategic role. Executive level. Autonomy. Big things." I almost laughed. Almost. The same man who'd called me redundant, who couldn't look me in the eye when he shoved me out the door, was now offering me a seat at the table, because he realized the table wobbled without me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I kept it clean. "Craig," I said calmly, "I don't come back to places that treated me like overhead, especially not to work for someone who couldn't see my value until I became competition." There was a pause. A long one. "Well, that's unfortunate to hear," he finally muttered. "Not for me," I replied. "But good luck." I ended the call. No rage, no hesitation, just clarity. And as I set the phone down, I realized something. The sweetest revenge isn't yelling at the door that slammed shut. It's walking confidently into the one you built yourself. After I hung up on Craig, something shifted inside me, like the final thread tying me to that old world had snapped clean. I wasn't just running from something anymore. I was running towards something I had built with my own damn hands. A week. Later, I made it official. Monroe Strategies was no longer a secret side hustle. It was my full-time, all-in, ride-or-die venture. We didn't have a fancy office. Just a shared co-working space in downtown Austin that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Our conference room was really just a corner with a dry erase board that someone had left marker stains on. But it was ours. And it was honest. No inflated titles, no office politics, no 30-minute meetings that could have been emails. Just focused work with people who gave a damn. I was pulling 12-hour days, 7 days a week. There were no HR perks, no catered lunches. I was doing client calls at 9 p.m., scrubbing decks at midnight, and invoicing at 2 a.m. And yet, I felt lighter. There was no weight of pretending, no tightrope walking around egos. I wasn't building someone else's dream while being told I was replaceable. I was building my own, with nothing but grit and a reputation I had earned. And that reputation? It carried further than I thought. Clients didn't care that we didn't have a fancy logo or a C-suite full of buzzword-tossing execs. They remembered that when shit hit the fan, I was the one who picked up the phone. That when procurement dragged its feet, I got things moving. They weren't signing with Monroe Strategies because of our size. They were signing because they knew I followed through. Every new contract felt personal. Every win was intimate. Not just numbers on a dashboard, but proof that I wasn't some cog in a machine. I was the one who had been quietly keeping that machine running all along. Vanessa handled client operations like a beast. Alex optimized workflows with a calm fury that clients loved. We weren't a team built by recruiters. We were built by survival, by resilience, by getting kicked down and deciding never again. And as I looked around our tiny space, watching my name slowly appear on contracts and recommendation chains, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. They took my title, my office, and my salary. But what they didn't realize was I'd taken every ounce of value with me. 12 months. That's all it took. 12 months of relentless days, unpaid weekends, caffeine-fueled strategy calls, and moments where I questioned everything. But then came the email. Subject line: Proposal accepted. Welcome aboard. It was from a global logistics tech firm based out of Zurich, one that my old company had tried to woo for years but never made it past the second meeting. The contract was worth $4.8 million over 18 months. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. We didn't just win. We dismantled the ceiling they told me I'd never break through. A week later, I got a message from a friend still inside the old company. 2 senior department heads had quit. One of them had followed me out the door, and the other? Burned. Out. The place was bleeding from the inside. Morale was low. Revenue projections were down. Turns out, removing the people who actually do the work and replacing them with LinkedIn slogans and vision boards isn't a sustainable business strategy. Meanwhile, Monroe Strategies was thriving. We'd gone from a 3-person outfit working out of a borrowed conference room to a team of 12, with real desks, health benefits, and something better than a ping-pong table: respect. We didn't do flashy. We did effective. Clients stuck around. Word of mouth traveled fast. And then, the invite arrived. Rachel Monroe, featured speaker, West Coast Innovation Summit, San Francisco. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I wasn't a legacy CEO or venture-backed tech darling. I was a woman who got kicked out the back door of a company she helped build. But then I realized that's exactly why they wanted me. I walked onto that stage, not in some power suit from a department store I couldn't afford, but in something I picked for me. I wasn't there to impress. I was there to tell the truth. And when I looked out at the crowd, faces from firms that had ghosted me, execs who once called me too emotional, and even a few familiar profiles from my old job, I didn't flinch. I told them how I was discarded after generating millions, how I was underestimated, ignored, and quietly replaced, and how that became the best damn thing that ever happened. To me, the press dubbed me the lone she-wolf of enterprise consulting. It made headlines. It made people uncomfortable. And honestly, I didn't correct them, because maybe I was a lone wolf. But I'd built a pack. And we weren't just surviving, we were winning. I didn't build Monroe Strategies to get even, I built it to get free. Free from the glass ceilings, the condescension masked as mentorship, the performance reviews that always ended with, "You're great." But I didn't build a company to prove a point to my old boss. I built it to prove a point to myself. Being 40, female, and fired is not the end. It's the ignition switch. On that stage in San Francisco, under lights that once would have made me nervous, I felt nothing but calm, purposeful. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I told the room the truth they never hear on leadership panels. If they can't see your value, don't argue. Don't shrink. Don't beg. Walk away and build your own damn scoreboard. The room went quiet. Then the applause started. Not polite, but honest. And I saw them. Young women in the crowd nodding, men looking surprised, older professionals suddenly looking seen. I didn't sugarcoat the burnout, the fear, the nights I stared at my bank account and wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But I ended with this. They didn't believe in me when they paid me, but they damn well recognize me now that I don't need their paycheck. After I stepped off stage, people came up to shake my hand. But it wasn't that part I'll remember. It was the feeling, the deep, grounded knowing that I hadn't just rebuilt a career. I had reclaimed my worth. So, to anyone who's ever been dismissed, downsized, or told they peaked too early, remember this. You are not too late. You are right on time. And if no one opens the door for you, kick it open. Or better yet, build one that doesn't need permission. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe for more stories that tell the real truth behind corporate walls, and drop a comment below. Tell me, what was the moment you finally saw your worth? Let's talk. Let's not stay silent anymore.